Greetings programmers, Busted Thumbs here and welcome to my video series all about Scratch. I think most of you have come here have probably come because you wanted to learn a little bit more about Scratch so you know all about it. I won't spend a lot of time talking about what Scratch is, but all you need to know is that Scratch is a computer programming language that's done in a visual style and it's meant for beginners. It's meant so that you, if you've never had any experience with programming before, can learn to jump in and make your own games, tell stories, do whatever it is you want to do that you've always wanted to do on a computer. We're going to dive in by starting at the Scratch website. I'm got it up here on the screen already. The one thing that I've done that I'm not going to show you here is I've already created an account. So this is if you went to scratch.mit.edu, this is exactly what you'd see, except that it has me already logged in here. And all you'd have to do, if this is your first time, maybe pause this video, go ahead and create an account, and what you would see is something exactly like this. Now this gives you a bunch of samples of what you can see that other people have written, but we're less interested in that. And we're more interested in what you can make and how you can make those. So what you're going to want to do anytime you come into Scratch and want to work on your own things is to come up where your username is up here, go to this little drop down menu and go to your stuff. And you'll see that this is a brand new account, so there's no stuff in here yet, but this is where all your projects will be. And when you create projects, they'll just be yours. You're the only one who can see them until you want to and you feel like you're done and you want to share them with the world, and you can absolutely do that. But before we get to any of that, we're going to have to just see how to create one of these projects, and we're just going to get started right away with one. It's pretty easy. You see the button up there that says new project. We're going to click that button to get ourselves a new project. And that screen is going to come up with what is called the editor screen. And the best thing to do in order to understand how to use Scratch is first to understand what it is that you're looking at when you're looking at this screen. At the top here, you've got the options about your project. It says that this one's untitled. You can very easily change that. This is, for us, this is our beginner's tutorial. And so we'll just put that name inside there, so the next time we come back to that front page that has our stuff inside of it, we'll know that this is the one that we started for our beginner's tutorial. You don't need to worry too much about the options up here up top, except that if you ever want to go back, that Scratch button right there will take you to the home page. Now your program itself is actually sitting inside of this box in the upper left. That's what this guy is. And you can see that they've provided us a wonderful program here. It's got a cat on a white background. We'll get to playing with that in just a minute. But let's take a look at these buttons that are up here as well. The first one's this one over here on the left. This program of ours is in a pretty tiny screen, tiny portion of our screen. If we wanted to see it bigger, take up much more of the screen, well, we can just click that like you would when you're watching a YouTube video and you want it to pop up on your full screen. And you could just see your program how it looks right then, or you can run it from there. But most of the time we're going to be working with it over here in this small little section until we want to see how it's working. Then we've got our information about the name of the title and who it is that's working on it, and you can see right here this is being done by me, and this project currently is unshared. That means I'm the only one who can see it right now. When we're all done with this tutorial, I'll show you how to publish it, and then everybody can see it. Then up here in the upper right, we've got this green flag and that stop sign. And that green flag is just like a racing flag saying that you can go. If you click on that button, that will run our program. And if it's running and you don't want it to be running anymore, well, then you click on the stop button. The program's sitting right here, as I said before. And then below it, this is actually kind of when we start getting into some of the more interesting things. That cat up there is not the only thing in this program. Turns out there's two things. There's the background and then there's the cat. The background they call a stage, and the cat and other things like him are things that they call in Scratch, they call those sprites. And so you can see we've just got that one sprite there right now, and all of our sprites will be listed in here, but right now we're just going to worry about that one little sprite. If we wanted to do something with the background itself, we would click on that guy, and now we're working on that white background and not that cat. But right now we're going to be working on the sprite cat. Now these sprites we can do a lot with them without even touching any of the code. I can just simply click on him and move him around and put him wherever I want to. If I wanted him to walk across the bottom here, if that's what my program was going to do, I might start him down here and I just drag him into place. You can see that the sprite right there, once I've got him selected, it's got a little I in the upper left-hand corner. That I stands for information. And then underneath him, underneath the way he looks, that little icon there, it actually gives a little name. I don't like that name. That name isn't very specific. It doesn't tell me what my sprite is really. So if I click on that little information button, it brings up information about that entire sprite. And since this is the cat, I'm going to call that sprite the cat. We can make him turn if we want him to be facing in a different direction at the start of our program. Right now you can see he's facing 90 degrees, that's straight ahead. These X and Y, I'll tell you about those in just a second. And then you have a couple other options. Maybe you wanted to start without him showing at all. You'd click that little button, he won't be there anymore. Now you can see that he wasn't part of the program. Right, there's still, even though he's not part of the program, you'd still do have your stage and your backdrop to work with. But let's just let him see. If you wanted to make it so that when you're playing around with writing the code about this guy, you could click that little button and you wouldn't be able to drag him with your mouse anymore. But that's okay, we can let ourselves drag him. Now this X and Y might be a little bit confusing. You can see right here at the bottom of the screen there already is an X and Y, and it keeps changing as I move my mouse around. Those little tiny numbers, which might be kind of hard to see in the video, they're changing too. And it turns out when I put my mouse pointer right in the middle, those numbers get real close to 0 and 0, X and Y. Now the X direction is horizontal here. It goes left to right. And the Y position goes up and down. And it's just this is what we call a coordinate system. Right in the middle is 0, 0. And as I start going to the right, that X starts going up. It goes all the way up to 240. Once I get to the end of that screen, there's 240. And if I go all the way to the left, guess what? It's negative 240. So what does that mean? That means there's 480 pixels, little dots, that make up that screen that go from left to right. And that doesn't change. Even if I make this really, really big, there's still 480 pixels that are going across. That's because they're not real pixels. They're kind of these makeup pixels. There are 480 of those going there. Now, so let's check this for Y. When you're going up and down, you'll see that Y stops at 180. So what's it going to be when we go all the way down? Of course, it's going to be negative 180. That means that there are 360 pixels going up and down. And if we dragged our cat around, you'd find that he's doing the same thing. We go this way, and the X gets bigger. We go this way, and the X gets smaller. This way, the Y gets bigger, and this way, and the Y gets smaller. And that's going to be really important as we start actually doing interesting things with our programs. Well, when we're all done with the information about this little guy, we can click this little back button that's taken the place of where our eye used to be, and it's become just a little tiny sprite icon on the left here without all that information. And you see that the name did change. We called it cat, and now it's cat. Over here on the right, this is where we're actually going to be spending most of our time. This is where we write the code. In Scratch, the code that we write, they call them scripts. And the scripts can be attached to either a sprite, and we can make as many sprites as we want up to a limit, or they can be attached to the backdrop. And the backdrop means that it's just always there. It's something that is always attached to everything. But the scripts, if we put them inside of a sprite, they're just going to work on that little sprite. We'll get to actually coding in a minute. Now that you've got kind of a sense of all the little things that are inside of here, you obviously don't know yet what all of these things are. This is where we're going to spend most of our time. I thought I'd also show you what you can do a little bit to edit these things that doesn't involve code. So on the stage, you can see that across the top in the middle here, you've got three little tabs you can select. One is for scripts. You can write scripts for your stage if you want to. That's what we're going to spend most of our time in. The other is for backdrops, and backdrops are the way things look behind everything. Once you put all your sprites in there and you do any sort of drawing, always behind that is going to be your backdrop. So I'm going to call this one the white backdrop. We'll just call it white. We know it's backdrop. And that will change the name of that particular backdrop right there. If you want to create new backdrops, you can do that in a variety of ways. You can actually pick a picture from your computer that you have in the back, that's just in an image file like a JPEG or a GIF or something like that, or a PNG. You can go ahead and pick that if you want to. You can try and roll it in from a camera, or you can paint it yourself. The other cool thing is that Scratch actually gives you a bunch of these things. So like, say I want to work against a blue sky. Well, I can just pick this blue sky that's right here, and down at the bottom there you got a little OK button, and now all of a sudden I've got a blue sky. And that's the script that I can work against. And just by selecting this one or this one, I can decide which one I want it to work with. Now, I like kind of having this blue sky because now I can see that part of my Scratch cat is white and he's not part of the background. So let's just leave it at that. We'll have these two backdrops, and we'll know that white is there, but we just won't see it for now unless we want to go and change it. Sprites are the same way. So you'll see that when I switch over to my sprite, I select him instead of the backdrop. It's not that I have a background anymore. What I have instead is costumes. And you can see that when this default program that they give us this sprite cat so that he has two costumes. And you can tell a little bit if you're used to like drawing in those little flip books where you drew the animation where the guy's got his feet apart when he's stepping, and then they're a little closer together, and then feet apart, and if you flip through it, it makes it look like he's running. Well, that's what we have here too. We have two poses of the Scratch cat, kind of like how he might be walking or running if you were to flip between the two. We can decide we want him to look a little bit more like that, like he's right in the middle of a stride, or this one where he's kind of just standing and a little more still. We just pick this one, and then we can go off. And we can name these as well. Like this, to me, is more like stride 2, and this one right here, this can be stride 1. And just like we did with the backdrops, we can go ahead and pick from a costume library. We can make new ones that they give us. They have all sorts of things, fruits and sports stuff and all sorts. We can paint our own. We can take a picture that we have on our file, or we can try and get a picture from our camera or any sort of image source. In addition to that, you can import sounds, and this cat happens to make a sound, kind of a meow sound. And you can bring in your own sounds from whatever sources you have to. Now that you know about all those things, you kind of have the background for the bits and pieces that aren't code. And all the code can work with all of those things. But those are the things we just need to know before we can even get into writing any of the code. Now, this has been a bit of a whirlwind. Anytime that you go through these tutorials, I encourage you at any point to stop, pause the video, experiment for yourself, create an account, create a project, play around with the images, create your own backdrops. Just move things around. We haven't gotten to the point where we've done anything fancy, but nothing fancy that involves code. But you need to get familiar with all these steps. So just go a little bit at a time, try these things out, see what you think about them, and then we can move on to the next tutorial. I'm gonna show you one last thing before we end this particular video and are ready to go on to some real code in the next video, and that's those two buttons I said at the top. Seeing as we do have a program here, it's completely empty, but it's still a program. What happens when we click the green button? And you'll see nothing happens. But that's okay, right? The whole point of Scratch is that it's supposed to do the code we write. And what's the point of the code we write? It's to tell it what to do. Well, that means if we haven't put anything in there, we've got nothing to tell it what to do, so it's doing nothing. It's doing exactly what it's supposed to do, in that it's doing nothing. All right, so now you've got a little bit of an introduction to the bits and pieces that make up the Scratch editor and what we're going to need before we start bouncing into the code itself. I hope that helps, and I want to see you in the next few videos so that we can learn exactly how to make this thing do what it is we want it to do and make it be interesting for all of us. Remember, keep coding, come on back, and we'll learn a lot more about Scratch.